Humanity's been dreaming the world into being for as long as we've been writing things down. I know it sounds crazy, but please stick with me. Jewish mystics told a story about a rabbi who shaped a creature from the clay of a riverbank. He brought it to life by inscribing one word on the creature's forehead. The Hebrew word emet. It means truth. The creature was called the Golem. To unmake it, the rabbi would erase one letter, leaving the word met. That meant death. Language gave it life, and language took it away. The story didn't come out of nowhere. As many of you know, the Hebrew Bible opens with a creator who speaks the world into being. The rabbinic tradition holds that the letters of the alphabet are the instruments of creation. It's what creates reality. Reality is spoken, reality is written. Language isn't what we use to describe the world. Language is what the world is made of. Centuries later, a 19-year-old English woman named Mary Shelley wrote a novel about a man who built a thinking being from inert matter and animated it through forbidden knowledge. She called it Frankenstein. We remember it as a monster story, but really, it's not a monster story. It's a continuation of an archetype that was created centuries before by those Jewish mystics, just translated into a different, more modern vocabulary. For thousands of years, humanity's been imagining beings sculpted from matter and animated by words. Today, we don't call these words incantations or prayers. We call them code. And we're not just imagining them anymore. We are building them. The pattern's not only about thinking machines, it's everywhere our imagination has ever gone. In 1966, Star Trek showed us a transporter that disassembled people in one location and reconstituted them in another. The idea was pure fantasy. But then in 1993, physicists at IBM published a paper describing something they'd never seen before, a way to transfer the quantum state of a particle from one place to another without it physically traveling in between. They needed a name for it, so they called it quantum teleportation, explicitly naming it after the show. They didn't build Captain Kirk's transporter, but what they found was actually stranger. A fundamental property of the universe that Einstein himself refused to believe was real. He called it spooky action at a distance. The dream came first, the physics followed. In 1997, an Austrian team demonstrated it with a single photon. And then in 2017, a Chinese satellite did it across 1,400 kilometers of open space. Just recently, in 2024, researchers successfully routed quantum teleportation through a regular fiber optic cable that was carrying ordinary everyday internet traffic, something most physicists thought was absolutely impossible. No one is beaming anybody anywhere just yet, but the scientist who discovered this really did name it after the teleporter in Star Trek, and the dream did come first, drawn up in a Hollywood writer's room, decades before the labs caught up. In 2015, researchers at the University of Bristol built a working tractor beam. They used precisely tuned sound waves to lift and move objects in midair. More recently, optical tractor beams using light, not sound, were demonstrated on macroscopic objects. Star Trek and its tractor beams were a plot device in 1966, now a tool being used in laboratories. In 1994, a Mexican physicist named Miguel Alcubierre, I hope I didn't butcher his name too badly, published a paper showing that the warp drive concept from Star Trek did not violate general relativity. The math worked. The catch was that you needed exotic matter with negative energy density. This was stuff no one knew how to make, and for 30 years, that settled the matter, or at least it seemed to. And then in 2024, researchers at the University of Alabama in Huntsville published a paper showing that a slower-than-light warp drive could be built without exotic matter at all. Just ordinary physics. We're not building warp drives next year, but the math is no longer dismissed, and few physicists, if any, would argue the science. In fact, most physicists now would agree that if we could solve for the material sciences, the mechanical engineering, and the incredible energy demands, we could actually create a warp drive. Again, not tomorrow, but it's possible. And then there's the age-old dream, the one that started this episode. The thinking things we make. From the Golem to Frankenstein, Asimov's positronic brains to HAL 9000, from Skynet to Data to her. Every generation tells this story, maybe a little bit differently, but we tell it again and again. Our hopes and our fears may shift, the archetype stays the same. It's a being we make, a being that thinks, a being somehow connected to speech and to words and the act of creation itself through language. We've been rehearsing this for centuries, and now the rehearsal is over. Think about this. Every prior technology we've ever built was the end product of our imagination, human imagination. For sure, ideas build upon ideas, but it's human ideas building upon human ideas. The plow did not help us imagine the next plow. It didn't actively participate in designing lighter materials or sharper edges. The printing press never wrote a book. It had no vocabulary of its own. Every generation of humanity has imagined something, and the next generation has built some version of it and sometimes improved upon it. But the inventions themselves were inert. The light bulb went on, but there was no thought in the light. Our inventions never dreamt of improvements to the next version. They didn't participate in their own evolution. AI is different. AI is the first technology that does. It actively participates in the imagining. The models we are building now, they're writing fiction, they're generating images of futures, they're proposing scientific hypotheses that we've not even thought to ask. They're looking at blind spots that are real blind spots where we just haven't even looked. Just a few days ago, an AI model solved a math problem that's challenged our most brilliant mathematicians for something like 80 years. An interesting point there is immediately following that discovery by the AI, a human mathematician seized upon it and actually improved upon it even further. AI is not just the latest output of a human idea or something we dreamt up. AI is now part of how that dream continues. It's a feedback loop. That feedback loop, that's the thing to pay attention to. That's the entire game. For thousands of years, humans have imagined a reality that lagged behind. The Golem became Frankenstein, became HAL, became the model you can talk to on your phone right now. But now for the first time, the imagining itself is being amplified. We're about to imagine, about to dream further and faster and stranger than any generation before us, because the dreaming's no longer ours alone. And as a result of this, what we choose to dream right now is going to matter more than it ever has. I asked you to stick with me, and I hope you're still there, because we are going to go a bit deeper to a question that's been buried under all of this, a question the modern world's been struggling to answer. What's the difference between intelligence and consciousness? For most of human history, this question was central. It was central to art, to literature, philosophy, religion. All of it circled around the mystery of inner life, the soul, the mind, the miracle of being aware. The great traditions, East and West, treated consciousness as the deepest territory a human being could enter. In fact, the sciences as we know them today emerged from inside of this spiritual quest, not in opposition to it. That's right. You can actually credit our soul searching for the creation of sciences. Our very desire to understand the soul, understand what we were, is what sparked our desire to systematically decode the physical universe. But somewhere in the last few centuries, the sciences became so dominant that they just sucked the air out of every other approach to answering the biggest questions of existence. Materialism became the default, and consciousness was redefined, downsized, maybe even marginalized to mechanics. What brains do. Mind became an output of matter. The inner life, when it was discussed at all, was just discussed as biochemistry. The account never quite worked, but it has held the floor for a very long time. And here's a significant irony worth noting in today's episode. Our very effort to define consciousness may have led us down a blind alley that has all but assured our inability to find the answer. I'm not even sure we've known what the question is. And then AI arrived. Here's one of the strange things about AI. It's unmistakably intelligent. In more ways, every month it exceeds what humans can do. But while some may try to make the case that AI is conscious, most AI researchers would agree that it doesn't feel, it doesn't perceive, it doesn't experience, certainly not the way humans perceive or feel or experience. That's not just a technical hurdle to overcome. We ourselves don't understand human consciousness, so we can't be expected to just bake it into a silicon wafer. We do know that intelligence and consciousness are not the same thing. And a real explanation for what consciousness is, what it is something the materialist account, with all its dismissiveness, has failed to provide. And now, with the arrival of these super intelligent machines, it's forcing humanity to take consciousness seriously again. We're approaching the question with a renewed vigor, an approach that science and materialism had dulled. Not because anyone had ever proved these old traditions were right, just that this new technology has made the question of consciousness impossible to ignore. So here's the possibility I want to leave you with. Just maybe consciousness is the real frontier, not the intelligence which we're now mass producing. And if that's possible, then just maybe AI is positioned to do something we could have never imagined. Not because AI is conscious, but because AI is intelligent and may grow to be super intelligent. It can already hold more of the relevant data than any human mind can. It can cross-reference traditions across cultures and centuries. It can surface patterns in literature, mystical literature, in neuroscience and physics and philosophy, in the lived human testimony that no single investigator could ever see. Maybe what we're building is nothing close to a god, but not a slave either, and not an assistant. Maybe it's something closer to what older traditions called a shepherd or even a shaman. A guide into territory that the guide itself can't enter. A partner into humanity's oldest project, figuring out what we are and perhaps where we came from. And that project, when you look at it closely, is the project of recovering something that feels like we've forgotten. AI might actually help humanity discover aspects of itself it has forgotten. 3,000 years ago, the rabbinic tradition held that the world was spoken into being. Reality was built from language. The letters are the instruments of creation itself. Centuries ago, Jewish mystics imagined a being made from matter and animated by a word on its forehead. 200 years ago, an English teenager wrote essentially the same story in a vocabulary her readers could understand. And today, we're building large language models, intelligence constructed from language itself, the word-made machine. The story hasn't changed. We're still a species that creates through language. The making still carries weight that we don't fully see in the moment of creation. Writing it down, it's creating reality. Science fiction is humanity's dreaming out loud, and dreaming out loud has always been us, dreaming the world into being. We're entering a partnership older than we can realize, but with a vocabulary so new, we've yet to learn how to use it, how to understand it. But what we choose to imagine next becomes what our children, our grandchildren, all of our descendants will live with, what they'll live inside of. So, please, dream carefully, dream beautifully, dream like the future is listening. Because it is. I'm Gil. Thanks for joining me on the Human Precipice. I'll see you next time.